But last week, we started a brand new series called Next Level Love. And what we looked at, and we just asked a simple question, and the question was this. It was, if you could start relationships or friendships or partnerships and minimize the level of potential pain that you could experience, how many people would say yes to doing that? And I think a majority of us would, if not all of us would, want to try to figure out ways that we can connect with others, but would minimize the amount of pain that we would experience in our lives. And I meant to mention this last week, but I forgot to. There's a guy named John Van Epp. He's actually a Christian therapist. He's also a Christian counselor. I guess that is what a therapist is, isn't it? But he works with families and those kind of things. And he actually wrote a book, which I love. I love the title. It's How to Avoid Falling in Love with a Jerk. Right? So I bought like 4 copies for my kids. Great title. But he also wrote one for marriage called Building Better Together. And both of them follow this same principle that we talked about last week. And what we did last week was we introduced the relationship attachment model. You can see that right on your screen. We introduced that last week. And so here's what we talked about is we looked at the different levels of love. So Xavier, go ahead and show that little table. So the table, there you go, the relationship attachment model. And so what happens is if you look on the bottom, you'll see it represents like different faders. And so if you turn up the fader of no or the fader for trust, the fader of rely, it just depends on the depth and the level of the relationship that you have in that way. Now, the beautiful thing about this is for many of us, if we want to know how to minimize pain, the best way to do that is to look at and see how it really does follow a progression. So you want to start with knowing someone, then trusting someone, and then relying on someone, committing, and then so you see how it grows. And what happens, and it kind of makes sense when you look at it practically, is if you do a certain development out of order, then you open up the possibility of having and experiencing pain in your life. So when you look at it that way, you see the breakdown that way, it really does make a lot of sense. Now, there is a theme verse for this series. It's Philippians chapter 2, verses 4 through 5. It says, don't look out only for your own interests, but take an interest in others too. You must have the same attitude that Christ Jesus had. So we're talking about having great attitude when it comes to relationships and friendships and partnerships. And so hopefully what we're doing over the course of this is helping us to understand what is the mindset that God has towards relationship, and then how can I implement that into the mindset that I have towards relationships, so that way I can begin to develop healthy relationships as well. So last week, we talked about no. That was the first one, is that we looked at that last week. So we talked about no, and we looked at how important it is to begin to start the foundation there, that you want to make a commitment to know and to be known to allow that to be able to grow. So now this week, what we're going to do is we're moving on to level 2, and we're going to talk about trust. We're going to look at trust this week. And so we want to make sure that we're beginning to build that. But now here's the problem, is if you look at where the trust-o-meter is, and you look at where the no-o-meter is, what are we setting ourselves up for potential what? Hurt, once again, right? Because we trust them more than we know them. We trust them more than we know them. And I love this. I found this quote that I wanted to share with you this week. It says, a relationship without trust is like a car without gas. You can stay in it all you want, but it won't go anywhere. But it won't go anywhere. And the truth is, if we're honest with ourselves, many of us really do have trust issues. We do. And sometimes it can start out with the most innocent thing, but sometimes it can start out with really trying circumstances. I heard about a story that I wanted to share with you guys this week that I think really does exemplify what it's like to have trust issues. So this happens in Algeria. There's a man who marries this woman, really excited. They have their wedding that night. They're really excited about their wedding. They're excited about being married. And of course, you know, it being their wedding night, he partook of the drink a little bit happily. And so he woke up that morning, so went to bed a little bit inebriated. Woke up that morning, looked at the person next to him, and was shocked. Like he thought that there was a strange woman in the bed with him. So he woke up and like tried to push her out of the bed. So then she woke up and she looked at him, and so they're going back and forth. And so she's trying to convince him, like, I am your wife. She's trying to convince him of that. And he was like, no, you're not. And they were going back and forth. But finally, she was able to prove to him that she was his wife. And so later on, you would think like that automatically begins to build issues there. Like, dude, you don't know who your wife is? But the reason why is because that's the first time in their entire relationship he had ever seen her without makeup. And so that's why he didn't know who she was. And it goes on. Like, you think that's good enough, right? It goes on, and he actually sues her. He sues her for, he called it psychological suffering because of the makeup issue. So he sued her for 260,000 dinar, which ends up being about $14,000 that he sued, maybe just enough to cover the marriage, right? To cover the wedding. But you talk about starting your relationship with trust issues, that's a great way to do it. That's a great way to do it. Absolutely. Definitely very toxic. So here's what I found, is there are two reasons why we don't trust people. We don't trust people, one, because I don't know you, so I don't trust you. Or we also don't trust you because I do know you, so therefore I don't trust you. So how do we begin to build healthy trust in our relationship? So going back to our table, we're looking at building this commitment, building this relationship where not only do you know someone, but as you grow in your knowledge of them and who they are, and you grow up in your intimacy with them, that you also begin to grow in your trust that you have with them as well. Now, here's the thing that would be interesting. What if we could do with our relationships what we do at jobs? What if we could do what we do with friendships, but with jobs? What do I mean by that? So when you go to get a job, what's the first thing you do? You fill out an application. Are you qualified to have this job? And then what you do is you go through an interview process. And then what you might go through is a probationary period to prove whether or not you can handle this job. What if our relationships were that way? What if, you sit down and, you meet the guy, you meet the girl, and they pull out the application, have you filled it out? Like, hey, I think about being friends with you. Can you fill out this application for me? Kind of thing. It would be interesting. But the reason why I think the struggle would be is because the truth is, how do we build trust with someone? How do we get to know them? How do we build that connection? What's the challenge in that? And so the way that I wanted to look at it this morning is just imagine, like, I've been through a couple of remodels. And one of the first things that you do with the remodel is you don't just start building, right? What's the first thing that you do? Is you create plans, architectural drawings, because you want to make sure that what you're creating will fit what it is that you vision. So you create a plan for that. And the whole goal of that plan is, if you are building a brand new bathroom, right, and you want your custom toilet that you just found with bidet and seat warmers or just whatever it is, so we were like, but whatever it is, but you want your special toilet. You want to make sure that you have the space that can fit the toilet that you just bought, that you want for that bathroom, that kind of thing. So the idea behind it is a blueprint is just kind of a layout of what you want it to be like. And so think of it this way, is you want to have a blueprint of trust. What is it that you look for? What is it that you want to look for in a person that will be your friend, or eventually maybe that you'll date, or eventually maybe that you'll marry, or if you're going to build a business, be a partner with? What are the tools? What are the principles? What are the practices? What are the characteristics? What are the moral principles? What do you want to look for? So do you have a blueprint of saying, hey, this is what I want to start with in building trust and being able to go there? It's important that you make a commitment to have that opportunity to be able to do so. Why? I love what Abraham Lincoln says. Abraham Lincoln said this: you can fool some of the people all the time, and all of the people some of the time, but you cannot fool all of the people all of the time. So the great thing is, when you have that blueprint, it makes it more difficult, in essence, for you to be fooled. because you know exactly what it is you're looking for. And if they don't tick that box, then you know that that's not what it is that you want. And from there, you can be able to decide what you want to do in your friendship or in your relationship. You know, we talked about Samson last week because Samson is a great case study for how not to be in a relationship. He really is. And we talked about last week, he just saw someone based on sight, wanted to be with that person, that created a mess. And now we find him in another relationship with this woman named Delilah. And basically, Samson is from a tribe called the Israelites. Delilah is from a tribe called the Philistines. So we definitely have like a Romeo and Juliet kind of thing, people from two different backgrounds that should not be together, but they are. And what happens is Samson has been in many battles with the Philistines and have won many battles with the Philistines. And so they go to Delilah because it seems like Samson has this superhuman strength. And so they go to Delilah and they say, look, since this guy is with you, we want you to find out what his weakness is. We want you to find out what his weakness is. And so this is what happens in Judges chapter 16, verses 6 and 7. So Delilah said to Samson, please tell me what makes you so strong, you big strapping man. No, sorry. Okay, she didn't say that. But please tell me what makes you so strong and what it would take to tie you up securely. And Samson replied, if I were tied up with 7 new bowstrings that have not been dried, I would become weak as anyone else. So he tells her that. And then he goes to sleep. And then she actually ties him up with 7 new bowstrings. And then the Philistines come in the room and she says, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. And it says he pops the bowstrings and then he handles business. Right? He handles business with them. So then what happens is they come to her and they say, we thought you found out the secret. So they put more pressure on her. And so this happens 2 more times where he says, this is my weakness, and then she does what he says, and then the Philistines are on you. Now, at some point, you would think Samson would go, I think she's trying to set me up. Right? You think he kind of figured that out. You think he would. And the thing that's really interesting is when you go back and you read Samson's story, it tells a story of how he got his strength, and it's connected with the length of his hair. But it tells his story in that way. And if you notice what happens is each time he tells her her secret, it gets closer and closer to what the real weakness is. So then what happens in verses 15 and 16, because now the Philistines are really angry. Now the Philistines have really put pressure on her. And now they're like, you got to figure this out or else we're going to handle business with you. And so she goes to Samson, and it says this in verses 15 and 16. Then Delilah pouted. She put that pouty face on. How can you tell me I love you when you don't share your secrets with me? Now, here's the thing that I found with people that are not trustworthy. Haven't you noticed that when people are not trustworthy, they tend to try to push you to trust them that much more, that much faster? To try to give in that much more. And so it goes on to say, you've made fun of me 3 times now, and you still haven't told me what makes you so strong. And it says, look at these words. She tormented him with her nagging. That's some serious nagging. She tormented him with her nagging day after day until he was sick to death of it. Sick to death of it. Now, you would think he would be like, man, I'm tired of you nagging me. I'm out. I don't want to share my secret with you. I'm out. But he doesn't do that. And so he shares with her. He says, here's the truth. If you shave my head, and I think he got a little cocky too. If you shave my head, then I'll lose my strength. So he falls asleep, and she shaves his head. Now, I have to ask you this too. How deep of a sleeper are you? If someone can shave your head while you're sleeping, I mean, that's some serious sleeping. But she shaves his head, and then Samson, the Philistines are on you, and he gets up, and he notices his strength has left him. It's left him. So he put his trust and someone that was not trustworthy, and ultimately, it cost him severely. And so you want to make sure that you have this blueprint of trust. Why? Because it helps you to make sure you don't put your trust into someone who's not trustworthy. It says in Proverbs chapter 25, verse 14, a person who promises a gift but doesn't give it is like clouds and wind that bring no rain. Now look at this from a farmer's perspective. If you're a farmer, you are reliant upon rain to take care of your crops. And so you see the clouds coming, and you think, all right, we're going to get rain. The wind is coming. We're going to get rain. And then nothing happens. And then it happens again. Nothing happens. And then nothing happens. Eventually, you will see the clouds, and you'll be like, whatever. It's not going to happen. And I think sometimes what we do is we see the relationship, and that relationship with us has become hope. That relationship with us has become an opportunity to love. That relationship with us has been an opportunity to maybe rein in identity, maybe rein in something that we feel like we need to make us feel whole. And so we begin to rely on that relationship for that. But the clouds are coming, the winds are there, but the relationship never fulfills its promise. It never fulfills its promise. So it's so important for you to make sure. And here's the thing, too. Why do you want to have a blueprint? Is because the blueprint helps you to be able to recognize red flags. It helps you to be able to recognize red flags because you'll be able to see, like, hey, here's the blueprint of trust that I have, and this person's not fitting that trust. You'll be able to recognize red flags. Because here's the thing that I've noticed. It is so much easier to recognize red flags in everyone else's relationship but yours. Amen? It really is. We're in love. People tell you, oh, that's not him. Oh, that's not her. It's so hard for us to recognize it. So that's why we want to have this blueprint in place so that we can be able to say, like, oh, this is a problem. This is an issue. This is a challenge. And so again, going back to that table, as we look at this whole idea of relationships, is we want to make sure that we are building the relationship where we know someone and we trust them. That element is growing, that element is developing, that we have that. So it's so important for us to be able to see that because now the question is, how do I get to know someone where my trust is growing? How do I get to know someone where that's happening, where that's developing? How do I do that? And in his book, where he talks about how to avoid, falling in love with the jerk, in his book he says this, and I love this. He says, intimacy equals talk plus togetherness plus time. Talk plus togetherness plus time. Those three. So talk. Any relationship starts with talk. Like you're getting to know one another, you're talking with each other, and then togetherness. You're hanging out with one another, you're getting to know, but really it's time. Because the truth is, time is the thing that will reveal someone's weakness. Time is what will give an opportunity for someone to reveal how they're not trustworthy. Because up until that point, especially if it's someone that you're trying to date, they're trying to woo you. They're trying to win you. So they're going to put their best foot forward initially. They really are. Wouldn't it be great if people came with Carfaxes? People fax. Right? So you can look, because whole idea of a Carfax, right, is that it helps us to be able to trust whether or not we want to purchase this car or not. So you come with a people fax. Like you look it up on the internet, and there it is right there, displayed right in front of you. Oh, wow, this guy has broken a lot of hearts. I don't know. So we can go through, this woman has this, oh, boy. Wouldn't it be great if people came with those kind of faxes? No, so now, once you have your blueprint, now what you want to do is you want to begin to build the structure. That's the same thing you do in remodel, right? In remodeling. You have your blueprint, now you start to build the structure. And so with that in mind, what does building trust look like? I'm going to share a verse with you that I don't think we've ever connected with building trust. But it really is powerful in that way. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 4 through 7 says, love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It is not irritable. It keeps no record of being wronged. It does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. And endures through every circumstance. So love is patient. How important is it to have patience when you're talking about building trust? How important is that? You want to be patient with them, you want to be patient with yourself, but you also want to be patient in giving it time. Now, I know that this idea of patient is you also want to be patient with someone else's weaknesses. I know that it's referring to that as well. But the thing is, there are some weaknesses that you might want to be patient with, but if you're developing a friendship or relationship or partnership, there are some weaknesses that you might be going, no. Right? We would all agree there's a big difference between a 3.3 earthquake and an 8.3 earthquake. Right? We'd agree that there is a significant difference in magnitude. So there is a difference between being patient with someone who has 3.3 weaknesses compared to someone who has 8.3 weaknesses. There's a big difference between the two. So being patient, giving yourself time, you can begin to decide which type of weaknesses you want to be patient with and which ones you want to handle. But I love that. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not jealous. Love is not jealous. Jealousy is all about trust. It's all about trust. So again, you want to make sure that you are solid in who you are, that you know who you are. You have a firm foundation in your identity. Because if not, then you're going to jump into a relationship and you're going to give trust when trust has not necessarily been ready to be earned. So love is not jealous. So make sure that you are confident in who you are. Love is not boastful or proud or rude. In other words, love is not self-seeking. It's not about building itself. And the truth is, if you are building a relationship with someone and that person ends up not being trustworthy, odds are, because there's a truth, and we would all agree, people who are extremely selfish tend not to be trustworthy. People who are extremely selfish tend not to be trustworthy. So we can look at that and we can begin to build a fashion off of that as well. Love does not demand its own way. We can look at that. And then also love is not irritable. Love keeps no record of wrongs. So the truth is, if you're going to build trust, trust begins and ends with forgiveness. You cannot have trust without forgiveness. You can't. And so again, and there's nothing wrong, and we'll dig into this a little bit more. We're going to talk about the difference between forgiveness and trust in a second. But it's so important for us to begin to recognize that. Forgiveness really is a foundation for trust. And I love this also. Does not rejoice about injustice, but the truth wins out. Love also recognizes, and trust is built on that. Trust does not celebrate, again, when it gets its own victory. It got its own way at the consequence or the cost of you. No, it doesn't celebrate that. Love is, we're in this together, and hopefully the truth will win out together. I love this. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, endures through every circumstance. Because problems are inevitable. They really are. They really are. And that's why you want to be patient before you jump into a deep friendship with someone or before you jump into a relationship and move it towards dating or even, move that towards marriage. That's why you want to make sure that you're checking those elements out, because in giving yourself time, then you have an opportunity to be able to see, wow, is this person really trustworthy? Is this someone that I could be in a friendship or relationship with or partnership with where I will never give up, never lose hope? Well, I can continue to be able to do those things. And here's the truth, too. The greater the depth of the relationship, the more difficult it will be to get out of it. So that's why you want to make sure that you lay the foundation, you have your blueprint, and now you're beginning to build trust. Now, and here's the thing. Again, relationships fail when there is no framework of trust. That's important. Relationships fail when there's no framework of trust. And so with this in mind, now what do you do when you're on the other side? When you've invested in that relationship, you've invested in that friendship, you've invested in that partnership, and you've been burned. What do you do when you've been burned? And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk to the burn-e, and then we're going to talk to the burner. So first of all, let's start with the burn-e. Now, I can tell you sometimes what our tendency is to do when we get hurt. See, what we try to do is we begin to start to practice distancing ourselves from the person with whom that has hurt us. But then eventually what happens is we get to a place where we decide, I never want to be hurt again. So we put ourselves in a position where we feel like we are protected, where we feel like there's no risk, where we feel like we're in a situation where my heart will not be broken once again. And so we hide ourselves behind this wall. But now here's the problem, is you can't get in, but I can't get out. I'm stuck in this place where I am now not able to connect with you and have a relationship with you. Now, here's the problem as well, is not only does this affect my relationship with you, it also places us in a position where God can't get in either. So what has to happen is we have to be willing to take the risk. We have to be willing to open the door. We have to be willing to allow trust to be rebuilt, to be restored, to be renewed once again. But now the question is, well, Ken, how do I do that? How do I do that? Have you ever done this in a remodel where something's not built right? And so you just look at it and you say, what? Tear it down and rebuild it again. Tear it down and rebuild it again. So what we do is when we go into the door and we hide, we've torn it down, but guess what we're not doing? Is we're now not rebuilding. We're now not restoring. We're now not reconnecting. So how do we do that? It's one word that we talk about a lot that is not fun to do. It's a word called forgiveness. Right? It's forgiveness. You have to be willing to forgive the person who's hurt you. And some of you in this room and some of you watching the live stream, is you are still carrying hurt and anger due to not forgiving someone for what it is that they've done to you. And again, I just want to emphasize this, that there is a difference between forgiveness and trust. And I know, because some of us may think, well, what if I forgive them and they continue to hurt me? What if I forgive them and they continue to, and there's some things that we can do to protect ourselves to make sure we don't put ourselves in a position for them not to. But what if I forgive them and they don't come back and ask me for forgiveness? What if I forgive them? And so what we do is we withhold our forgiveness. But someone said this, I thought this was great. Holding on to bitterness is like drinking poison but expecting the other person to die. You have to be willing to forgive. And let Jesus be our model. When Jesus was on the cross, he said what? Father, forgive them. Forgive them. And the crowd that was there, they were like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? Get him down. Go get him down. And they pulled Jesus off the cross, and they're like, Jesus, we are so sorry. And they dressed his wounds. Is that what happened? No. So his forgiveness was not contingent upon what they did. His forgiveness. So we need to make a commitment to forgive. And like I said before, forgiveness does not equal trust. I saw this description, and I love this. They said, forgiveness is past-oriented and undeserved, or past-oriented and undeserved. In other words, you don't deserve my forgiveness, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. And I'm forgiving you for the past. I'm forgiving you for what it is that you've done. Trust is future-oriented and earned. So I'll forgive you for the past, but I'm staying right here until you show that I can trust you in the future. Hey, Ken, I have to go to Lowe's to pick up some mulch. Can I borrow your car? Sure. Go ahead, borrow my car. So you go to Lowe's and you pick up some mulch, and that's great. I'm glad that you did that. But on your way back from Lowe's, you get into an accident in my car. You get in an accident in my car. And then you come to my house. Sorry, Ken. got in an accident in your car. Here's what happened. Hopefully you called me while you got in an accident so I can meet you there. But I got in an accident in your car. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But then you don't pay for the accident. And I'm like calling and texting, emailing you, Facebooking you, sending out, doves to your house to try to get you to pay me back. And you refuse to pay me back. I still need to forgive you. I still need to forgive you. But if you came to me and said, now, I'll also tell you this. While I'm in the process of forgiving you, it might be good not to be in front of my car. Just saying. While I'm in the process of forgiveness. But I still need to forgive you. But let's say I'm in the process of forgiving you, and you come back to me and you say, hey, Ken, can I borrow your car? Was that you, Miss Judy? I heard, psst. She got girlfriends. She's like, like, no, there's no way I'm letting you borrow my. You think I'm crazy? You didn't pay for the accident that you had. Now, does that mean that I haven't forgiven you? No. It just means I'm not stupid. That's what it means. So you want to make sure that whoever broke your heart, that they're able to give retribution, that they feel what it is that they've done, that they try to apologize, that they do whatever they can to make it right. Then what happens is that opens the door for you to be able to trust them in the future. That opens the door for that. So it's important for you to be able to do that. I love what it says in Colossians chapter 3, verse 13. It says, make allowances for each other's fault and forgive anyone who offends you. Remember the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. Remember the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. And I want to make sure this is really clear. In a situation where there's abuse, get out. Get out immediately. Get out. Well, babe, I'm sorry, it'll never happen again. Get out. You get away. Now, if you want to stay in a relationship, then what you say is you need to get counseling. You need to get anger management. I need to see some things in place before I ever step back into this house again, because you need to show me that I can trust you. You need to show me that. But don't put yourself in a position to be continually abused by this person. So that's to the burnee. Now let's talk to the burner. Because sometimes here's what happens is I do something wrong and I offend you and I come to you and I ask you, forgive me for what it is that I've done. And you say, I forgive you for what it is that you've done. And then I act as though nothing ever happened. When the truth is, you may still be recovering. And it's very easy for me as the offender to look at the offended and say, hey, we need to move this thing forward. Because I've already apologized. I've already done what I did to make it right. Why are you still putting these restrictions on me? Well, here's the thing is, you lost the right to be able to declare how the relationship moves when you were the one who broke that trust. So you need to allow the offended to move the relationship towards trust at a pace that they can handle. If I broke my arm, I would go to the doctor. And what would the first thing they do? Does it hurt here? I'll show you. Yeah. Yes, it hurts there. But then what would they do? They put it in what? A cast. And the whole idea of the cast is to do what? Is to restrict movement until it heals. And so what happens is when you are the offender, what you've done is you've put your relationship in a cast. And so you've restricted movement. And what you need to do is you need to be okay with that movement restriction until the relationship heals. And until the offended is able to say, you know what, let's go ahead and let's continue to move forward with this relationship. I see you progressing. I see you taking steps. I see you healing. I see you moving. I'm ready to begin to trust in you that much more. But it really does. It takes time to build trust. It takes time to build trust. So I really do hope that today will encourage you. Because again, there's someone watching this live stream and there's someone in this room and you've had your trust betrayed. So again, lay the foundation, or lay the blueprint for what trust will look like. Begin to build on that trust, and then if you have to, tear down and begin to rebuild once again. Father, I thank you. I thank you for your presence. I thank you for who you are and for the way that you constantly work to allow us to heal. And I want to pray for whomever that broken person may be. Lord, that this will be an opportunity for them to find renewal in their relationship with you, restoration in their relationship with you. Because here's the truth. The truth is I can't move forward in allowing myself to heal until I spent time with the healer. So I spent time with you and allowing my relationship with you to take me through that process of growth and development and change. And so, Lord, I pray that you would continue to place your hand upon me. And all these things we ask in your name. Amen.